Thanks, LINH, for being here. Let me allow you to share your screen. There we go. So whenever you're ready, you can start.
Okay, thank you so much for your introduction, and thank you for having me. I actually met Roxana through Facebook. I think since the start of the pandemic, a lot of virtual activities happen, and I'm so happy to be connected. Also because I'm on the affiliate network professional council of TESOL International. So I got to know a lot of affiliate leaders from all over the world. And I often tell people that I feel at home being with people, with international people. And that's what I do as well. I teach international students at Chatham University. I also run my own organization called EduLINH International. And we have students from different countries as well. So let me share with you my screen. Oh, it says cannot start screen share while the okay.
Yeah, I guess now
I can share it now. Let me see. Okay, so I'm gonna share my PowerPoint. I'm gonna start the slideshow. Okay, so today I'm gonna talk about tasks and gamification for mobile learning. And I will explain each component of the topic as I move along. And this is my email if you would like to connect with me. And this is the website for the app and for the task that I'm going to talk about today. So let me move on to the next slide. This is my picture in Pittsburgh at TESOL, just a few months ago. So let me move. Oh, okay. It's just some music playing here, but let me move to the next slide. So have you heard of task-based language teaching, TBLT? Yes. It's an approach that has been discussed a lot, has been talked about a lot, and has been researched a lot in the past few decades. And I have a very short definition here. The aim is to develop learners' communicative competence by engaging them in meaning-focused communication through the performance of tasks. So this is a simple definition by Alice and Shintani. And I have to say that both of them were my professors when I did my doctorate with Anaheim University, and actually Rod Ellis was my dissertation supervisor. So I feel very strongly about task-based language teaching. Now, this approach can allow students to focus on form as well, because as they complete a task and their focus is on meaning, you can still draw their attention to language form, or you can create the use of certain form essential to perform a particular task. And this approach is often contrasted with the synthetic approach. The synthetic approach is that you assume that you're going to teach bits and bits of the language, and the learners are going to synthesize them and will be able to use them in communication. But that's not the case, right? You may teach them individual words, you may teach them grammar rules and sentence structures with the thinking that, okay, I'm going to throw them out there and they will be able to communicate. It's not it. So TBLT is more like an analytic approach in the sense that you expose learners to the language data, and they analyze the data, and then they will be able to deduce the rules from the language data as well. So language use is really important in task-based language teaching. When we talk about task-based language teaching, when you have a course or a curriculum, then the tasks serve as primary units to organize teaching and learning. And in task-supported, but task-based, I have to say, is actually difficult to implement. You already have curriculum and courses that may be focused on the language structures. It's very difficult to throw out everything that we have. So usually we may use what is called task-supported curriculum. You use tasks to supplement the existing curriculum. And in this project, that is what I do. I developed an app not to replace teachers, not to give materials to be taught in the classroom, but mostly for something that learners can do outside the classroom, and perhaps some classroom use can be supported here, but mostly it is for language use beyond the classroom. Okay, so let me move on here. What is a task then? not everything is a task because it's a technical term, right? Not everything is a task. What we have in our classroom maybe consists of a lot of activities, consists of a lot of exercises, but not everything is a task. The main goal of a task is to engage learners in communicating meaning, but how do you guarantee that? How do you guarantee that learners are not gonna just memorize something and then maybe use their rote memorization to just repeat a sentence? So I follow the criteria to define a task from Alice, and I created this graphic. Maybe it is a little bit busy here, but there are 4 criteria here to make sure that it is a task and learners are going to focus on communicating meaning. So you can see that the first criteria is to focus on meaning, right? The ideas, the meaning. If you read something, you need to understand it. That's the focus on meaning. If you communicate with someone, your focus is on the ideas, right? It's not about like, I can say this sentence out loud. That's not a focus on meaning. Number 2, there has to be a communicative gap. So the gap can be a gap of information. If I have different information and you have different information, we have to exchange. That's an information gap. The gap can be an inference gap. You listen to something and your understanding or your inference may be different from mine. So we have a reason to complete a task as well. Or the gap may be in opinion. If we are in a discussion and we need to express our opinions, the gap may be in opinion. The third criterion here is that learners need to use their own linguistic resources. This is when they have to use whatever they have and perhaps even non-linguistic resources as well. Instead of just like repeating a sentence or complete a sentence, right? Completing a sentence, they need to use linguistic resources, not someone that you say, okay, use this. And then the 4th criterion is that there has to be a communicative outcome beyond just using language. So for example, this may be a little bit difficult to see, but I have 2 robots here and you can see that there are some differences. And if the students have to talk to find out the differences, they need to mark the differences on their picture. So that is a communicative outcome. They need to show an outcome at the end. Or if you listen to me and you have to draw a route on a map, then that is also a communicative outcome. Or I ask students to discuss and make a decision. The decision is a communicative outcome. So I hope it is clear and it makes sense. Sometimes when I have to talk about these 4 criteria, I always often forget one. But these guarantee an activity to be what is called a task. Okay, moving on, I'm gonna give you an example from Alice, and maybe you have seen it before because I think this example has been used a lot. Tell me, is this a task or not? So you see, this is, let's just say this is from a book. And the students are told to look at Mary's shopping list and then look at the list of items in Abdullah's store. So Mary's shopping list has different items here, and Abdullah's the Abdullah store has different items here. And then the students are told to work with a partner. One person is Mary and the other person is Mr. Abdullah. Make conversations like this. Good morning, do you have any oranges? And then maybe Abdullah will say, yes, I have. Does he have any? No, I don't have any. So students will make conversations like this, right? But is this a task?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. So if I was a student, I would just go through the list, right? And let me see, yes. Is there any gap here? Is there any communicative outcome either?
Yes, there is a conversation with a gut feeling where the student have to follow the conversation, but the production in this case is just developing a conversation that they have to according to the sequence they have, no?
But this is not a task because, like I say, there's no gap. There's no gap. You already have all of the information here. And if I was a student, I would just go through one thing at a time. And then Abdullah would just answer based on the information that they already have. And there's no outcome. You don't have to showcase anything at the end. Let's compare with this one then, this version. You can change it a little bit, and this will be a task. So let's compare. Students are going to work in pairs, right? And there's student A and student B. Student A, you are going shopping at student B store. Here is your shopping list. Put ticks next to the items on your list that you can buy. So student A has access to this information. Student B, you own a store. Here's a list of items for sale in your store. Find the items that student A asked that you do not stock. So this is the information that student B has access to. And you can see now there's information gap, right? Mary doesn't know what Abdullah has. Abdullah doesn't know what Mary wants to buy. And also, Mary has to put a check or tick next to the items that she cannot buy. And now Abdullah also has to put or take notes of the item that the customer asked, but he doesn't have. So now this is a task because there's a gap, there's an outcome as well. You may say that this is somewhat similar to the previous one, but you can see the difference here. Learners now have a reason to communicate. They have to negotiate meaning, and they have to perhaps even struggle to complete the task. So I want to give this to you as an example, and I will show you a few more examples from my app. Now, if now you are interested in tasks and you want to develop these for your classroom so that students have more reason to communicate, I will go through some task design features here that you can consider when you design tasks. And I have to say that somewhat it is still difficult to design, and there are a lot of books that have tasks for you. The materials are still rather limited, and that's why I developed the app as well. So when you design a task, you may think about whether information exchange is required or optional. Exchange in the sense that whether you and I have to exchange information. Whether the information gap is one-way or two-way. In the previous example, you can see that the information gap is two-way, right? Everyone has access, or both people have access to different information. But if I am the speaker and you're the listener, and I have the information and you just have to follow what I say and do something with it, then the information gap is one way. And this is typical of listen to do task. I tell you to do things and you have to carry out an action. Task outcome, it can be open or closed. So for example, when I ask you to make a decision, maybe the outcome can be anything that is open, or it can be closed in the set that you need to, the answer, there's only one answer somewhere that the learners have to find out. Topic, you may choose a familiar topic or unfamiliar topic. So this is something that you can think about when you design a task as well. My research in particular has shown that familiar topics are more likely to encourage engagement. Actually, my dissertation is on task engagement. And then you can think about discourse mode as well when you design tasks. Will students mostly describe something? Will they give instruction? Will they tell a story, or will they share opinions? So you can also think about the discourse modes of the task, what kind of language learners are going to use. This is actually difficult, cognitive complexity. When you decide what task is more difficult than another, you may think about whether the task is context dependent. Context dependent means that you share the same context, so you can point to things. In a simple task, if students just have to point to communicate, that's simpler than when you write and the audience is not there. You cannot point, you cannot use the context. So that's context free. So context free tasks are more difficult than context dependent, but this is just one factor. Okay, so let me stop here and see if you have questions. I think I've been. Is it somewhat interesting?
I got a question. When you were presenting the first task that you were saying it is not a task because we don't see an information gap, and I totally understand your point, but it was very controlled, the first slide. But in order to prepare the students for the real task, let's say when they have an information gap, they need somehow a controlled pre-task, yes or no?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point that how can they perform a task when they don't have the linguistic resources, right? And if you follow a task-based curriculum or a task-based syllabus, you may introduce a new language through an input-based task. They listen to something, they read something, and they learn language through that as well. So I agree that in order to communicate, you need to have some linguistic resources already. But if you want them to engage in somewhat more authentic interaction, then you should give them a task, not an exercise like the first example. That is considered an exercise, not a task.
Okay, and actually, because in the second one, the second that you provided, that you were saying that is an information gap. However, for me, it is still a little bit controlled, because even though student A has, her own slide, but you are giving the options. Why not telling the student to write his or her own shopping list instead of giving, the item? That would be even better, because you are not giving anything. So students are not relying on controlled vocabulary.
Yes, that's a very good point. And that is exactly actually the topic of my dissertation research, that I allow the learners to create their task materials before they use the materials to perform a task. So that is maybe another step that you can take as well, that learners can create their own items in the store and the other learner can create their own shopping list. Yes. So that is another really easy strategy that you can use to also engage learners to bring their own content to your task. And my research, including 3 publications on this topic, is exactly this: to give learners some choice or more free choice rather than constrained choice. So I will share with you the links to my articles if you're interested.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. Yes.
LINH, I got a question. I would say something. Sorry. Well, according from the last part, after the first slide, when you show the next task, the one that you mentioned that is authentic communication, maybe that one. Yes, when you are presenting the list, the marriage shopping list, for me it's okay, because I consider that you are input. Okay, you're giving an input and you're preparing the students for the next stage, which is the not the control, but it is a productive outcome. So all the tasks are connected, a sequence. The first one you presented with this one, okay, has a connection, and as a result of that, you will have another task, the final task, which is more productive. That is my.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, there are some steps as well, and I will talk about that in the next slide, that these are task design features, but you can also think about what we call task implementation features. When you have something, then how do you implement it in the classroom? So I'm going to talk about task implementation features. You may have a pre-task stage. maybe to prepare learners a little bit, but it should be short because again, the main focus is the task. Otherwise, you will go back to the very traditional way of teaching, of like making a list and then teaching one item at a time. Or the pre-task stage can be input-based, like I say. And then you may think about participants' role, who is the speaker, who is the listener. So this is implementation. How are you going to implement the task in the classroom? You may think about whether you're going to give learners the planning time or not. There has been so much research on the effect of planning on task performance. You may think about whether you're going to ask learners to do task repetition, and there has been a lot of research on task repetition as well. They can perform the same task exactly the same way, or they can perform the same task with some modification. It has been shown to develop learners' fluency for sure, but if it is too repetitive, then their engagement may become lower. You may think about whether you're going to have a post-task requirement. Post-task requirement is like when they have to showcase something. So for example, you may ask learners to make a decision, and at the end of the discussion, they make a decision. But you can think about whether you want to ask them to present the decision, right? So that's the post-task requirement. So these are all the different things that you can think about as you implement tasks in the classroom. I tend to give learners planning time. In terms of roles, you want to switch roles so learners can talk and can listen, right? And sometimes I have post-task requirements, sometimes I don't. So you may think, and I also have some pre-task preparatory stage as well. So I think that may have answered the question when you think about how do I prepare learners, right, to perform a task. Okay, so this is just a very easy way of thinking about what tasks you want to have. You may be familiar with jigsaw tasks, and I just actually did it in my class a few days ago because my new summer semester has started. Jigsaw is when people have access to different pieces of information, and the classic example is maybe if learners read a short story, then some students read the first half, some read the second half, and then they have to reconstruct the story or share the story. Last week, I showed, we were reading about ancient civilizations that rose and fell. And the first one was about the Maya civilization. And then there was a very interesting 4-minute video from National Geographic. So I asked half of the students to watch the first half in the classroom, and then the other ones were outside the classroom talking. And then the second half came in and then watched the second part of the video, and then they had to exchange information. So this is a classic kind of information gap and in the jigsaw format, right? You may have decision making, they may have ranked something, right? They may have to rank to see what is the most, I asked students to, no, not rank. Yeah, they may have to rank in order to order what is the most important piece of, I cannot think of a particular example. What's their favorite dish for a party from 1 to 3. So then they have to make a decision. Or simply they share opinion. But if you ask students to just share opinions all the time without any outcome at the end, it's kind of boring. It is a task in a way, but it's a very weak form of task because the outcomes are not very clear. I'm sure you have done this. So if on this slide, perhaps some of the information is familiar. Okay, so let me stop here and see the chat. I see chat, but okay, I don't see any questions, but I see.
LINH, sorry, the last slide when you mentioned activities, we can include also the solving problem. It's a skill that produces an effect that the students think and reflect, and can we consider that as a task?
The artifacts, what did you say?
I mean problem solving, so activities related to problem solving.
Yes.
If we consider that as categorizing activities, categorizing tasks.
Yeah, if you give a more specific example, I can answer for sure. But usually, if you look at the 4 criteria, You can see whether there's a gap, right? If they solve a problem together, but each of them has access to different information, then there's information gap there, and at the end they have to present the solution to the problem. Then yes, it's more likely that's a task. It's just that Alice created the four criteria so that it is certain that it's a task, and learners really have to talk with each other to arrive at the outcome. Well, I hope that answers your question. We can look at more examples. Now I'm going to talk about my app and with some of the tasks, and perhaps that will help you to think about it. So if you have your phone and you want to download it now, you can do it. It's on the App Store or on Google Play, and you can just search for EduLINH Speak. I can put it in the chat, but perhaps you're using your phone, it's easier to just search for it. And then I will, if you want to experience it, I'm happy to let you experience it. But this app's purpose is to connect learners to talk in pairs based on tasks. So you cannot use the app on your alone. You can with some features, I'll let you know. But the goal is to connect two learners to talk in pairs based on tasks. And you can sign up as a learner, as an educator, and as a parent. I suggest if you sign up for it, you sign up as an educator, because later on, I think I'm gonna just, you can add students so that they have the same level of access as you. And it will be an easier way for me to grant you access or free access. So sign up as an educator and you can add students later. Now there's an issue that I want to mention. We just updated it, but the update has been approved by Apple, but not by Google. Google is much slower now. So now we have two versions, and two versions don't talk with each other, but you can, I'm pretty sure that by next week, Google will make it, will publish the updated version. So I just want to warn you if you run into errors. So if you, after you sign up, you should see a screen like this, and you will see different types of tasks. I have picture description, I have picture differences, I have picture sequencing, and many more. And the main goal, like I say, is to connect two people to talk. And then there's a pre-task. So some of you asked whether we should prepare learners for some language. There is a pre-task focusing on vocabulary so that they will pay more attention to these when they perform the task. And let me move to the next slide and I'll give you an example. I have, the app is for any learners older than 6 years old. So you can see some tasks are pretty simple. Adults have more difficult tasks. Not all of the, there are some questions that are not really tasks in the strict sense, but I'll talk more about that. So here, this is a very simple example. Speaker A has one picture. Speaker B has 3 pictures. A has to describe so that B can find the picture. So this is a task. It's pretty simple, but it is a task because there's information gap. There's an outcome. B has to choose something. Learners have to use their own linguistic resources to describe the dog here. They also need to focus on meaning. The goal is to solve this problem, not to practice any new words by reading them aloud, or the goal is not to fill in the blank with a word or anything. So very simple. And I have a lot of this suitable for small kids. My daughter, 4-year-old, not 4, 3.5. She likes it. I can show you a video. She actually likes the emojis here. When she discovered that she could give me an emoji, she was so excited. But anyway, I don't know if you have successfully downloaded it. But later on, if you have time, you can try with someone here. But you need the same device type at this time, either iPhone or Android. Okay, this is another task, very popular, very classic. Picture differences. So one student or one learner has this picture and the other learner has another picture. There are 10 differences between them. There are 10 differences between them and they have to talk to find the differences, right? I'm sure you know this task. So this is a task because, again, there's some gap in what they can see in the picture or information gap. And they have to describe and they have to talk to find the differences. And they have to click on the screen to mark the differences. And that's the outcome. Okay, this is another task type that I have in the app. This one is meant for learners to sequence the pictures to form a process or a sequence in a process. So learner A has 3 pictures, learner B has 3 pictures. Together they form a sequence, but they need to talk to put these pictures into the right slots. And again, you can see that they need to communicate to do this, and there's an outcome at the end. This is suitable for a lot of school tasks when they have to describe a sequence or a process. This is one of my favorite activities in the classroom, and I transferred it into a format, an app. I called it Crossword Partners. The classic crossword puzzle is when you have a puzzle and you have clues and you have to complete the crossword with the words. But with this, I turned this into a task. This is more like language focused task. Learner A has all the words down here or in columns. Learner B has all the words across. They have to explain to each other to complete the puzzle together. They cannot see each other's words. They cannot spell. They cannot tell the other person the word. But before they do it, I give them a list with definition and pronunciation. I use Google Translate. So if you put your first language as, I assume, Spanish, or maybe then it will translate it into your primary language. And I created a lot of tasks like this based on the academic word lists. Have you heard of this list before? The academic word list?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so this word list is so popular in the sense that when it was, it has the words that occur in academic texts, very common in academic texts. So students often need to learn these words in order to do well in the IELTS exam or in college. So if you search for it on the internet, you're going to see so many resources about it. So I use this list to create 28 crossword games like this. Yeah, for the TOEFL, for the IELTS, for reading academic text. Of course, I think they need to know more, but the words are just very good academic words. If you look at the list here, you can see these words. This is from 20 words from the list. Analysis, approach, area assessment, really good academic words for learners to learn. So this is another task in the app. I like this one. I thought of this. I invented this for the app. So this is, I called it Sentence Unscramble. And I took a lot of famous sayings from famous people or from movies or from books. And then learner A has some words, learner B has some words, and they have to move to the boxes here to form a sentence. So this one, maybe they're not gonna talk too much about different things, but they need to talk about grammar perhaps a little bit. And at the end, when they create the sentence, they can discuss it. So this is a sentence, a quote that I really like from Steve Jobs. Don't waste your time living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma. So I remember it because I use his speech to teach in a class. So this is another type of task I have in that. If you want to know how that the app is used, I will put this in the chat. I recorded this with another teacher, and then I recorded something with my daughter that was mostly for fun. It's just fun and funny, so I shared it on YouTube. But that is an example of how I and another teacher used the app, and I recorded it on my phone screen. And then I have a YouTube list about the app if you're interested in looking at some of the video.
LINH?
Yes.
So we need to sign up as educators. So we need to create an account for that purpose, right?
Yes, yes.
And what is the OTP? Because I did it already, but it says it says invalid OTP.
Okay. Okay. So you need to check your email, and we want to verify the email address. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if you cannot do it today, I'm pretty sure you can do it later. Yeah, we want to have a secure and safe environment, so we want to be sure.
Great.
Yeah. And then later on, when you want to add students, there will be a button in the profile to add students, and I will give you a code as well, because we don't want everyone to do it. We want to verify.
Someone in the chat was asking a very important question. Is it free?
Yeah, it's free. Yes, it's free. There's nothing there for now in terms of like advertisements or anything. At some point you may see advertisements, but it's free. Yeah, I just released it. Is that three weeks ago? And now I can share with you what my issue is. The issue is that you need to talk in pairs. So for now, learners will have to tell their friends to go there and connect with them. There are two ways to connect with people. You can click a green button, and if someone clicks on it, you're connected automatically and talk. Or you can choose a task and someone clicks on it and you're connected as well. But my vision is to have millions of learners from all over the world so that they can be connected very fast. By now, it's not very fast if nobody is there, but you can always tell someone to do it with you. We are still adding features, like we are adding a feature to allow people to add someone to their friend list, so that when you see that friend being green or on the app, you can request to connect. But it's not social media. I'm not going to make it into social media in the sense that learners don't share their contents there or don't follow others and cannot search for others. I still have to be sure to make it a really safe environment. So if you don't have more questions about this, oh, I cannot believe that. Okay. I don't want to go beyond 1 hour. So I want to talk quickly about the concept of gamification. Have you heard of that? Or you can share in the chat your tasks. What are some of your favorite tasks in the classroom? And I will share this with you in the chat as well. A university, Indiana University in the US, is trying to build a task bank. Like I say, you may see that tasks are still not very common. In my opinion, they are still somewhat difficult to develop. It takes more time because books don't have so many of them, so teachers have to develop themselves, and then they take a little bit time. But this university in Indiana is developing a task bank, so you can submit your task there. There are tasks for pronunciation. I attended a presentation on pronunciation tasks. I was gonna do a research project in pronunciation tasks, but we haven't been able to do it because of the pandemic. But I want to share with you that resource as well, if you want to look into the different tasks that educators submitted there. Okay, so let me move on to talk about gamification, but I think I'm going to talk about it fast. Gamification in language learning apps. So I'm sure you know about some game platforms, right? Kahoot. What else do you know? Some of your favorite game platforms?
Quizzes.
Quizzes.
Wordwall.
Yeah, I love Wordwall.
My favorite is
Yes, yes.
Quizlet.
Yeah, Quizlet. Yes.
Socrates.
So, okay, Bamboozly. Huh, okay. Jeopardy Labs. So this is also my area of interest. I and my colleague at Columbia University in New York have been doing research into this for more than 2 years now. We have given our presentation at TBLT and at TESOL about gamifying language learning activities. There are a lot of platforms, but our argument is that we also need good instructional content, right? That the starting point is always good instructional content. But I have the definition here for you if you are interested in this topic and want to read more. So gamification of learning is the implementation of game attributes such as conflict, challenge, rules, goals, game fiction, assessment outside the context of a game to facilitate learning and related outcomes. So that's why it's gamification. When you think of games, you may think of very popular computer games, and they are played for entertainment purposes. But when you start to use those game elements outside the context of a real game like that for education or for business, then this is gamification or gamified activities. So I want to talk about this very quickly as well. When I say we, because this is the result of our research project. We also use this framework to analyze some of the games that teachers use in their classroom. And the point here is that you may use game characteristics and, okay, so let's say you want to influence student learning outcomes, then you can do that directly through your instructional content. However, you may also have some game characteristics in your activity to affect learners' behavior, and in turn, the behavior and attitude will affect learning outcomes. And the point that we really want to make is that our starting point as teachers should always be to have good instructional content. If you don't have good questions and you put them on quizzes or Kahoot, then they don't suddenly become an excellent activity just because it's gamified. So that's the point that we want to make with the research. But I want to show this to you also because through our research, we also learned some really common principles in gamifying activities. If for some reason you want to create an app like me, or you want to gamify the activities in your course, or you want to gamify your whole course, you may think of these different principles to design your activities. I know this is a long list, but for example, various game elements, I already mentioned game elements, the priority of intrinsic motivation. Someone has a question. Should I stop? Irma?
Or maybe you finish and then you answer.
Okay. Since we don't have much time, so I'm gonna talk through this. This is a long list. I'm happy to explain this more because I have to consider all these when I design the app as well. Some people are surprised with element number 13, the freedom to fail. This is interesting because in the game environment, learners can try something over and over again. They have the freedom to fail, and which is a good thing. So here I was gonna review some apps through research that you already know some really popular apps out there in the market, and there's an article that analyzed these apps to see what elements they use. So I'm gonna just skip this. In the case of Duolingo, there have been a lot of research articles into Duolingo because it is such a popular app. I'm sure you know Duolingo, right? Yeah. The company headquarters is in Pittsburgh, so I have visited the headquarters. I've talked with their team there, and I also aspire to become somewhat like them. But for me, it's just the beginning. So Duolingo has been researched and reported in this article because they are a strong representation of gamification in mobile assisted language learning because they incorporate so many different game elements in their app. And overall research has shown that there's some positive correlation between the use of Duolingo and performance, but the results are debatable because the assessment of learning is rather limited. Learners often report, or users report, a high level of satisfaction and enjoyment. So you can see that gamification does have an impact. And then also they have positive perception of the interactive and gamified nature. Some of the characteristics here, they really like it. However, in terms of, there are some critics as well, and these are not mine, it's according to research, that some see it as repetitive and boring, questionable real-life language use. This is, I can give so many examples of sentences that don't make sense or may never appear in real life. Behavioristic approach, this is the biggest criticism. Many apps, many technologies out there still follow this behavioristic approach in the sense that the activities, they are drills. You repeat, you imitate, you repeat, imitate. It's not real life communication. It's still pretty much behaviorist approach, which we have moved so far from in terms of language pedagogies. But the apps and mobile assisted language learning are still limited in the sense that they haven't really followed the developments in second language acquisition. Learning tools focused on rote learning, I already say that, memorization, translation, competition, and extrinsic rewards, not something internally that you really like and enjoy. Okay, so for EduLINH Speak, I'm not saying that my app solves all of the problem. It's just that I think I have a good starting point in the sense that I want learners to communicate with tasks in real life communication, and tasks have been researched thoroughly in the past few decades. But in terms of the principles, I try to also incorporate the different elements of gamification in the app and in the task. For example, when you look at the profile here, there's some feedback as well. You will see the number of tasks that you completed, the number of minutes that you talked about, and then the streaks. And we have added the chat history. You can look at who you chatted with for how long. You can also record the conversation, and other gamified elements are being added as well. Okay, so this is my conclusion. Tasks provide learners with opportunities for authentic language use in learning, not just memorization repetition. Tasks can be developed for the classroom and in an app. I hope that by now, maybe you are somewhat inspired to try a few activities and develop them. Gamification promotes enjoyment and can enhance learning. There's a meta-analysis about the effects of gamification on learning. Maybe I'll share later, but overall, there's a small to medium-sized effect. And to me, the reason why I developed an app is also apps provide flexibility, access, and self-paced learning opportunities. If you can use something, or if you can do something for just a few minutes a day for a long time, there's no doubts that you're going to improve. So some of my colleagues have been studying French or Spanish with the Duolingo app. And although some of the characteristics criticized, but when you stick with something for 200 days, 300 days, I'm sure that they have improved. So that's it. If you are interested in emailing me or connecting with me, I am on Facebook. If I don't know the name or you don't introduce, I may not accept as a friend, but I share a lot of information on my Facebook. I share information on LinkedIn, but not as much as Facebook. I have a website for the app if you are interested. So thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, LINH.